Gruda Ashbone woke up before the sun did. She had done this every day for 11 years. Not because she loved mornings. Not because she was the kind of person who smiled at sunrises and felt grateful for a new day. She woke up early because the stew needed 2 hours, and the market opened at 7, and there was no one else to do it. She pulled on her coat. Tied her hair back. Lifted the pot. It was heavy. It was always heavy. Black on the outside from years of fire, smooth on the inside from years of stirring. Her husband Breck had bought it the year they were married. He had carried it home on his back, laughing, because it weighed as much as a small child and he had refused to admit it was too heavy for one person. He had been dead for 19 years. She carried the pot to the market alone. Thornwall was a small village on the edge of the borderlands, where orc settlements and human farms sat close enough to share the same road but far enough apart that neither group needed to say much to the other. It was not a cruel place. It was not a kind one. It was simply a place where people were busy and did not pay attention to things that did not concern them. Gruda's stall sat at the east end of the market. Not because anyone told her to go there. No one had ever said, "Go to the far end, stay out of the way," they didn't need to. It was the kind of thing that arranged itself. She set up her table. Laid out her bowls. Put the pot on the small iron stove she carried in a wooden cart and lit the fire underneath it. The smell rose slowly at first. Deep and dark and rich, bone marrow and slow-cooked root vegetables and a handful of dried herbs she grew herself behind her house. The orc way of cooking. Long and heavy and full of something that humans in Thornwall always described as strange before walking past. She had heard that word so many times it had stopped meaning anything. By 8 in the morning, the market was busy. The bread stall sold out quickly. The vegetable sellers were loud and cheerful. The butcher at the center stall told the same joke he told every Tuesday and people laughed every Tuesday, which had always amazed Gruda, who could not remember the last time she had laughed at anything. 3 customers came to her stall that morning, the same as always. First was old Mara, an orc woman in her 80s who walked with a stick and always wore the same green shawl. She came for the stew every time, ate it standing at the table, said nothing, and left a fair amount of coin. Second was a teenage boy named Dull, not his real name, she suspected, but the only one he'd given her, who was half orc and half something else and looked like he was always expecting to be asked to leave somewhere. He paid in vegetables from his family's garden, which Gruda accepted without comment. Third was the dog. The dog had no name that she knew of. It appeared at her stall around 9 o'clock, sat down with the patience of someone who had nowhere better to be, and waited. She always gave it the last bit of broth at the end of the morning. This had been going on for 3 years. She was fairly certain the dog was the most loyal customer she had. She was cleaning up at noon when the farmer arrived. He came around the corner of the vegetable stalls quickly, holding a piece of paper and looking at it instead of where he was going, which was why he nearly walked directly into her pot stand. He stopped just in time, grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself, and looked up. He was a human man, somewhere around 40. Broad across the shoulders. Dirty boots, which made sense for a farmer. A face that looked like it had spent a lot of time outdoors making decisions it wasn't sure about. He looked at her stall. He looked at the pot. He looked at the bowls. He said, "Is this food?" "Yes," Gruda said. He picked up a bowl and looked at it. "What kind?" "Stew." He fished around in his coat pocket, found some coins without counting them, set them on her table, and held the bowl out. She filled it. He ate it standing there, right in front of her stall, which no human customer had ever done before. They usually walked away quickly, if they came at all. He ate the whole bowl. He looked at the pot. He looked at her. He said, "What is this?" "Food," she said. He put the bowl down on her table, still looking at her like she had said something confusing. Then he nodded, once, as if he had decided something, and walked back the way he had come. She looked down at the coins he had left. He had given her 3 times what the bowl cost. His name was Edrin Coyle. She learned this the next day because he came back. He brought a bowl again. He ate it the same way, standing at the table, not talking, finishing the whole thing. Then he stood there a moment longer than necessary. "You here every day, he asked. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, she said. He nodded and left. He came back Thursday. He came back Saturday. By the second week, he started arriving with someone else, a neighbor, he explained once, briefly, named Ossel, who was a large man with very strong opinions about food and was not shy about sharing them. Ossel tasted the stew. He stood still for a long moment. Then he turned around and called out to two people passing behind him. Come try this, he said, loudly, with the confidence of a man who had never once doubted his own recommendations. They came. They tried it. They bought bowls. The third week, something changed at the market. Gruda noticed it first in where people were walking. The foot traffic that usually stayed near the center stalls began curving toward the east end. Not all of it. Not dramatically. But enough that she started running out of stew before noon, which had never happened in 11 years. She began making more. More took more preparation, which meant waking up earlier. She was already waking up before the sun. Now she was waking up before even that, in the deep dark before any light existed, standing in her kitchen, stirring. Ossel brought his wife. His wife brought her sister. The sister told everyone she knew, apparently, because Gruda began seeing faces she had never seen before. Human faces, mostly. Some curious, some uncertain, some trying very hard not to look like they had walked to the far east end of the market specifically to stand at an orc woman's stall. She didn't care about their expressions. She cared about the bowls. Old Mara came by one Thursday morning and stopped when she saw the line, 6 people, standing and waiting. Not a long line. But a line. Mara looked at it. Then she looked at Gruda. Her face did something complicated. She opened her mouth as if she was going to speak, then closed it, and pressed her lips together, and looked away. Gruda pretended not to notice. They both understood each other perfectly. One afternoon, about a month in, Idrin Coyle stayed after his bowl was finished. He leaned against the side of her table with his arms folded and watched her clean up in the comfortable way of someone who had decided they were not in a hurry. Do you make anything else? He asked. I make other things, she said. Will you bring them? She thought about this. She had cooked many dishes over the years, other things Breck had taught her, things her mother had taught her before that, things she had figured out herself in a long quiet kitchen with no one to feed but herself. She had brought nothing else to the market because it had not seemed worth it. You don't prepare a feast for 3 customers and a dog. Maybe, she said. He nodded like this was a firm commitment. She brought 2 more dishes the following Saturday. Both sold out by 10 in the morning. One afternoon, watching her stir the pot, Idrin asked, What do you call this? The stew. Gruda kept stirring. The question was simple. 4 words. But it sat differently than other questions. What do you call this, as if it deserved a name? As if someone should know it by name. She thought about it, and that was the problem, because thinking about it meant thinking about where the recipe had come from. It meant thinking about Breck, who had taught it to her not once but many times, standing behind her in the kitchen with his chin resting on the top of her head, saying, No, stir slower, the fat needs time. It meant thinking about the fact that he had called it the good one and she had called it nothing, because you don't name a thing you make for yourself in the dark. You don't name something you never expected anyone to ask about. Idrin noticed she wasn't answering. He started to say something, she could hear it forming, the beginning of an apology, a sorry, a forget I asked. Breck stew, she said. The words came out quietly. She did not explain. She kept her eyes on the pot. Idrin was quiet for a moment. Good name, he said. He did not ask who Breck was. She was grateful for that in a way she would not have been able to explain to anyone. He was a farmer. He understood that some things get named after what you have already lost, and that naming them is its own kind of carrying. Spring turned into summer. The stall grew. Gruda added a second table. Then a proper cloth cover to keep the sun off. Idrin built the frame for it on a Saturday afternoon while she was working. He hit his thumb with a hammer twice, 3 times, actually, but the 3rd time he was quiet about it, which she respected, and used language that she had not expected from someone who otherwise seemed quite reasonable. She said nothing. She handed him a bowl of stew. He accepted it, looked at his thumb, and decided that was sufficient response to the situation. The elderly orc woman, Mara, began bringing her daughter on Thursdays. The daughter was middle-aged and had never been to Gruda's stall before. The first time she came, she looked at the line of human customers and then at her mother with an expression that asked a question she didn't have words for. Mara shrugged, which was the most eloquent thing Gruda had ever seen. The dog continued to arrive at 9 o'clock. The dog's loyalty was, if anything, the least surprising part of this whole year. There was one evening in late summer that Gruda sat outside her house after market day and thought about the thing she had not wanted to think about. Idrun had mentioned, carefully, as if placing something fragile on a table, that there was an empty building near the center of town. A proper kitchen inside. Space for more equipment. He had said it the way people say things when they badly want the answer to be yes but are afraid to want it too much. She had said she would think about it. She was thinking about it. What she kept coming back to was the pot. It sat on her kitchen shelf in the evenings, empty and heavy and black from years of fire. Breck had bought it and carried it home laughing. She had cooked in it for 31 years. It had fed her through every quiet, difficult, invisible year of her life. The question she kept turning over was not whether she was ready to grow. She understood, in the slow and certain way she understood most things, that she was ready. The question was smaller than that. She was wondering if the pot would look right in a bigger kitchen. She thought it probably would. The morning she decided, she woke up before the usual time, which had not seemed possible. It was still full dark outside. She stood in her kitchen, hands on the edge of the stove, looking at the pot. She thought about 11 years of walking to the far east end of the market without being asked to. About faces passing her stall without stopping. About a dog who had been more consistent than any customer. About old Mara's face when she saw the line, that complicated expression, too full for one woman's face to hold neatly. She thought about Idrun, who had eaten a bowl of stew by accident and come back the next day and the day after that and had not made a speech about it or turned it into a story he told about himself. He had simply come back. She thought about the name she had finally said out loud. Breck stew. She picked up the pot. She went to market. She told Idrun yes on a Thursday, between the morning rush and noon, while she was wiping down the table. She said it simply, without a lot of surrounding words, because she did not see the need. He nodded. Looked pleased. Tried not to look too pleased, and failed. We'll need to move some things around, he said. I know, she said. It'll take some time to set up. I know that too. He picked up his bowl and turned to go. Then he stopped and turned back. Breck would have liked this, he said. I think. He had never said the name before. She had only said it once, and that had been to the pot as much as to him, and he had somehow understood that and held onto it quietly until it seemed right to give it back. She looked at him for a moment. He would have eaten everything and taken credit for the recipe, she said. Idrun smiled. For the first time in a very long time, longer than she could quite locate, so did she. The following Tuesday, she set up at the east end of the market as usual, because the move was still weeks away and there was no reason to stand around waiting for a future that was coming on its own. She lit the fire. Put the pot on. The smell rose the same way it always had, deep and dark and rich, the orc way, long and heavy and full of things that took patience to understand. Old Mara arrived first, as she always did. Paid her coins. Ate standing at the table. Dull arrived second, paid in vegetables, and left quickly, the way he always did. The dog sat down at 9:05 with the expression of someone who had always believed in her and saw no reason to make a big thing of it now. The line started forming around 9:30. It stretched back past the bread stall. Gruda stirred the pot. She did not smile at the line. She did not feel the need to make a moment of it. The pot needed attention, and the stew needed care, and the fire needed watching. Some things you learn to trust by doing them the same way, in the dark, long before anyone arrives to see it. She kept stirring. The morning kept going.